In the muted light of early dawn, I awoke with an unspoken anticipation, as if the day itself was whispering promises of transformation. Seattle, cloaked in a persistent gray mist, and the soft drizzle of rain, seemed to mirror my own inner uncertainty. The familiar hum of the city, usually a comfort, now pulsed with an undercurrent of possibility and quiet urgency. I dressed swiftly, my mind preoccupied with a sense of disquiet that I couldn't yet name. Gripping my keys, I left the warmth of my apartment and stepped into a world that felt both known and strangely altered. Driving through the fog-enshrouded streets, I was lost in thought, the rhythmic swipe of windshield wipers punctuating my reverie. It was during one of these moments, when the mundane had merged with the surreal, that my focus faltered. A near miss with a bicycle jolted me back to a present charged with unforeseen risk. I pulled over, my heart still pounding from the adrenaline of that near collision, and stepped out into the damp, cool air. That's when I saw him, Ethan, my stepchild, standing quietly on the roadside. In the diffused light of morning, his presence struck me in an entirely new way. Gone was the familiar boy I once knew. Instead, a young man with eyes full of an unexpected gleam, an intensity and maturity that hinted at untold depths. His gaze, calm yet probing, seemed to silently challenge the comfortable roles we had both long accepted. In that charged moment, the world around me appeared to shift. The mundane routines of my life, my work, my responsibilities, even my relationship with Michael, now paled in comparison to the enigmatic potential that Ethan embodied. As the gray skies of Seattle pressed in around us, I sensed that the day was heralding more than just a change in weather. It was the beginning of a transformation that would disrupt every certainty and demand that I confront a truth hidden in plain sight. The industrial venue buzzed with a controlled chaos as I stepped into the expansive hall, a renovated relic of the past now pulsing with the vibrant promise of contemporary art. The sharp scent of fresh paint mingled with the lingering traces of metal and machinery, setting a paradoxical tone that resonated with my inner conflict. I was here not just as a curator, but as a reluctant architect of transformation, tasked with shaping an exhibition that could redefine the cultural landscape of the city. Amidst the scattered sketches and installation prototypes, my thoughts repeatedly strayed to Ethan. He was no longer merely the reserved boy who once navigated family gatherings with cautious smiles. Today, he moved through the space with a confident ease, his demeanor marked by a mature vibrancy that both intrigued and unsettled me. I recalled our countless professional interactions, long hours discussing themes, challenging perspectives, and blending modern visions with traditional canvases. But now there was an undercurrent of something unspoken, a spark that defied our established roles. I busied myself with finalizing the placement of a striking abstract piece when a fleeting glance towards a series of digital photographs caught my attention. There, in the interplay of urban shadows and muted light, I saw fragments of a story I'd never noticed before, a narrative unfolding within the very soul of our city. The photographs were undeniably his, and the realization that Ethan was redefining his creative identity in front of me both thrilled and disconcerted me. Every image spoke of quiet rebellion and profound introspection, capturing moments that resonated deeply with the ethos of the exhibition. Meanwhile, Michael's absence was palpable. Engrossed in his own ventures, he had retreated into a world where his presence was more a formality than a shared experience. His detachment lent an unintentional freedom to my work, yet it also deepened the void between us, a chasm silently widening as the day advanced. In that expansive hall, amid the interplay of light and shadow, the familiar roles of wife and curator began to blur. I found myself caught in a delicate balancing act, torn between duty and desire, tradition and innovation, as I attempted to stitch together a narrative that was as much about art as it was about the unexpected evolution of relationships. Every step I took in that hall, every decision regarding an exhibit, reverberated with the weight of change. I could feel the pulse of a transformation in the air, an electric tension that promised both creative triumphs and personal upheavals, urging me forward into an uncertain future. Late in the morning, just as the exhibition's final touches began to materialize, an unexpected call shattered the fragile calm I had been striving to maintain. The voice on the other end belonged to Robert, a renowned collector whose influence in the art world was as formidable as it was unpredictable. His tone was sharp, laced with an impatient urgency that instantly sent a shiver down my spine. He informed me that the opening of the exhibition was at risk. The marquee piece, the cornerstone of our show, was now off the table. The primary artist, whose visionary work had captivated so many, had abruptly withdrawn their participation, leaving us with a void that threatened not only the exhibition's integrity, but also the substantial backing of an investor whose trust was hard-won. As Robert's expectations loomed over me like a storm cloud, the reality of the crisis hit hard. My thoughts raced through a labyrinth of potential solutions while the pressure mounted. Every moment that ticked by without a viable alternative was a step closer to a public failure, one that could tarnish the reputation I had meticulously built. The urgency of the situation drove me to dive headfirst into a frantic search for a replacement, a piece of art that could capture the essence of the show and appease Robert's exacting standards. In the midst of this chaos, the dissonance between my professional obligations and my personal life grew more pronounced. The memory of my recent, complicated encounters with Ethan lingered in the background, a silent reminder of how deeply intertwined every aspect of my existence had become. With every frantic phone call and hurried meeting, I felt a mounting pressure that threatened to overwhelm me. I began to question my ability to juggle these conflicting worlds, each with its own set of demands and consequences. This crisis wasn't just about securing an exhibit, it was a test of my resilience, my creativity, and my capacity to adapt under duress. Every decision carried the weight of potential fallout, not only for my career, but also for the delicate balance of relationships that defined my life. As I scrambled to forge new alliances and explore untapped artistic avenues, a lingering thought echoed in my mind. Sometimes the most profound transformations are born from the depths of crisis, even as they unravel the very fabric of what once seemed secure. As the day unfolded and frustration began to erode my resolve, the atmosphere in the exhibition hall grew heavy with the burden of unmet expectations. The crisis of the missing marquee piece had left me teetering on the edge of despair, the ticking clock a constant reminder of an imminent collapse. I wandered through the half-finished corridors of our space, where discarded sketches and dormant installations lay in silent testimony to our struggle. It was then, amidst this palpable tension, that Ethan approached me, a spark of determination flickering in his eyes. Without preamble, he led me to a secluded corner of the hall, one that had been reserved for last-minute experimentation. There, spread out on a sleek digital tablet, was his new portfolio, a collection of photographs capturing the overlooked poetry of the urban landscape. Each image was a narrative of its own, rain-washed streets gleaming under the muted glow of neon lights, abandoned alleyways that whispered of forgotten histories, and intimate, almost imperceptible moments of beauty hidden in the everyday. His lens had transformed the city into a living, breathing canvas, a mirror reflecting both its raw realities and its quiet, ethereal grace. I sat down beside him, my initial skepticism slowly melting away under the weight of his evident passion and the undeniable quality of his work. These photographs did more than document the city, they reimagined it. They offered a fresh perspective on familiar scenes, inviting the viewer to perceive the interplay of light and shadow, chaos and calm, in a way that was both innovative and deeply personal. In that intimate moment, I recognized the profound talent that had always been there, just waiting to be unveiled in full splendor. The decision crystallized before me. Ethan's digital portfolio was not just a temporary fix to our exhibition crisis. It was a bold, authentic statement that resonated with the very soul of our artistic endeavor. Integrating his work into the program would not only salvage the show, but also infuse it with an unexpected vitality that promised to captivate and challenge our audience. As I committed to this new direction, a surge of renewed purpose coursed through me, and the hall, with all its imperfections, began to shimmer with the possibility of transformation. In the days that followed our unexpected breakthrough, the exhibition space transformed into a living laboratory of creativity. Each morning, Ethan and I would meet before the city fully awoke, diving into hours of intense work that blurred the lines between professional collaboration and something more personal. Together, we meticulously rearranged installations, experimented with lighting effects, and overhauled digital projections. The creative process became a silent dialogue, a language of shared glances, subtle smiles, and unspoken understandings that deepened with every passing moment. Our conversations were no longer confined solely to art. They spilled over into discussions about dreams, insecurities, and the fragments of our past that had shaped us. As we debated the symbolism behind a photograph or the hidden narrative within a seemingly ordinary urban scene, I found my defenses slowly melting away. In Ethan's eyes, I saw not just the reflection of a talented artist, but also a vulnerability that resonated with my own suppressed desires. His ideas challenged me, stirred something dormant, and ignited a passion that was both thrilling and terrifying. One rainy evening, after a particularly long day of rearranging and rethinking every detail of the exhibit, we sat side by side in the quiet corner of the studio. The soft hum of the city outside and the gentle patter of rain created an intimate cocoon around us. As the conversation lulled into a reflective silence, the air grew thick with tension. In that charged moment, our eyes met with a raw honesty that acknowledged the forbidden pull between us, a magnetic force that had been building over countless shared hours. Without a word, driven by a surge of emotions that transcended logic, I reached out and brushed a stray hair from Ethan's forehead. The gesture, innocent yet laden with meaning, broke the final barrier between us. The world around us faded into insignificance as we leaned closer, and in a heartbeat, our lips met in a kiss that was both tender and defiant. It was a collision of yearning and hesitation, a forbidden embrace that promised both ecstasy and inevitable consequence. In that stolen moment, as the rain whispered secrets against the window, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. After the intensity of our stolen kiss, a fragile balance began to unravel as the exhibition's opening loomed closer. In an effort to steady my turbulent emotions and solidify our creative direction, I arranged a weekend retreat at a secluded lakeside cabin in Oregon, a neutral space where art and introspection could coexist away from the unrelenting pace of the city. The journey to the lake was quiet, filled with a heavy anticipation that neither of us dared to fully acknowledge. Upon arrival, the cabin's rustic charm and the serene embrace of the surrounding pine forests offered a stark contrast to the industrial energy of our daily lives. Here, nature spoke in gentle whispers, a language of soft breezes, the lapping of water against the shore, and the distant call of birds, inviting us to pause and reflect. Inside the modest cabin, we settled into a routine that merged practicality with an unspoken intimacy. Mornings were spent reviewing sketches and discussing potential themes for the exhibition, our voices softened by the calm of the natural setting. Afternoons melted into long walks along the lake's edge, where we exchanged not only creative ideas, but also personal revelations. The fresh air seemed to breathe new life into our dialogue, enabling us to explore the depth of our passions and fears with a sincerity that had eluded us in the confines of our urban studio. As dusk fell, we found ourselves huddled by the fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows that blurred the lines between reality and dream. In these quiet moments, our connection deepened. We spoke of the risks we had taken and the consequences that lay ahead, not just for the exhibition, but for the tangled web of our personal lives. The lake, with its still, reflective surface, became a metaphor for the clarity we desperately sought. It mirrored our inner landscapes, turbulent yet capable of profound beauty when embraced. In the intimate silence of that evening, every whispered word and shared glance carried the weight of both hope and regret. While the creative partnership that had unexpectedly blossomed between us offered a renewed sense of purpose, it also served as a constant reminder of the delicate balance we were poised to shatter. With the weekend drawing to a close, I sensed that our retreat by the lake was not merely a pause from the relentless pace of life. It was a crucible in which our future, fraught with both promise and peril, was being silently forged. Returning from the lakeside retreat, the fragile calm we had nurtured was suddenly shattered by fate's abrupt interference. The drive back was heavy with unsaid words and the unyielding weight of what had transpired over the weekend. As twilight descended, our car, burdened with the unspoken tension, navigated a narrow, winding road. In an instant that felt both surreal and unbearably swift, a minor collision with another vehicle jolted us from our introspection. The impact was slight, yet enough to send shivers down my spine, as if warning that the consequences of our secret were accelerating toward an inevitable reckoning. In the ensuing chaos, we found ourselves at a small roadside clinic, the sterile white walls a stark contrast to the raw emotions coursing through me. Amid the quiet beeps of medical equipment and murmured reassurances from the attending nurse, every tick of the clock felt like an echo of impending doom. It wasn't long before Michael, informed by the incident, arrived at the clinic. His presence was imposing, a mix of concern, confusion, and something more profound, an unmistakable hurt that cut deeper than any physical injury could. The moment our eyes met, a silence fell over the room, charged with unspoken revelations. Michael's gaze, steady and searching, quickly pieced together the fragments of truth that had been hidden behind half-truths and secret smiles. His expression, a turbulent blend of disbelief and sorrow, silently accused me of the betrayal that had been festering beneath the surface of our lives. I felt exposed, as if every guarded secret had been laid bare under the harsh fluorescent lights of that examination room. In that heavy silence, the barrier between us crumbled, and the weight of our choices pressed down with an unbearable finality. The collision had done more than jolt our bodies. It had shattered the delicate facade we had so carefully maintained. As Michael struggled to find words, the stark reality of our tangled relationships became undeniably clear. The accident, minor though it was, had ignited a confrontation of truths that could no longer be deferred. In that charged moment, I realized that the path ahead was irrevocably altered, and the journey toward redemption or ruin had only just begun. The shock of that fateful collision and the painful confrontation in the clinic marked the point of no return. Back home, the atmosphere was thick with a mix of despair, anger, and reluctant resolve. With Michael's eyes still burning with unshed tears and a profound sense of betrayal, we gathered in the living room, a space that had once felt like a sanctuary, but now seemed like a battleground of raw emotions. The conversation that unfolded was unlike any we had ever had. Michael's voice wavered between hurt and determination as he confronted me with questions that cut straight to the heart of our fractured trust. There were no rehearsed lines or half-hearted apologies, only unvarnished truth laid bare in a torrent of words. I listened as Michael recounted his pain, the loneliness that had seeped into our marriage, and the betrayal that left him feeling isolated and diminished. At the same time, Ethan's quiet presence in the room, a living testament to the complexity of our entangled lives, lent an air of painful inevitability to the moment. As the conversation deepened, I found myself confessing the internal battles I had fought long before our paths converged in that forbidden kiss. I admitted that our actions were symptomatic of deeper, festering issues, a marriage that had silently unraveled, and a creative spirit that sought freedom in unexpected places. Every revelation brought with it a sting, yet it also paved the way for an honesty that was both brutal and, in its own way, liberating. Michael, his eyes now red from suppressed sorrow, agreed that the road to healing would be steep and uncertain. He proposed that we seek help, therapy, open dialogues, and the courage to rebuild what had been shattered. Even Ethan, who had inadvertently become the catalyst for this upheaval, voiced a desire to find his own path toward understanding. his youthful defiance tempered by an emerging responsibility for his actions. In that fragile moment, as the storm of emotions began to subside, we understood that reconciliation was not about erasing the past, but about embracing it as part of our shared narrative. With tentative hope glimmering in the dim light of the evening, we agreed to take the first steps together toward healing, a journey fraught with challenges but also, perhaps, the possibility of rediscovering the love and trust that once bound us. Months after that harrowing night in the clinic, our home became a cautious crucible for change. The raw emotions of betrayal and sorrow had given way to the slow, often painful process of healing. We found ourselves stepping into a future that, while scarred by the past, shimmered with tentative hope and the promise of new beginnings. Our weekly family therapy sessions, initially fraught with tension and muted accusations, gradually evolved into a forum of raw honesty. Michael, whose pain had once been a silent storm behind his eyes, started to articulate his feelings with a vulnerable clarity. He began to share memories of happier times, moments when laughter had bridged our differences, and admitted how deeply the fractures in our relationship had hurt him. In turn, I unveiled the weight of my own regrets and long-hidden insecurities, confessing that the forbidden connection with Ethan was as much an escape from inner turmoil as it was a betrayal. Ethan, too, matured under the steady scrutiny of this painful introspection. His art, once a burst of rebellious defiance, now carried deeper layers of meaning. I watched him transform. His photographs evolved from snapshots of urban solitude into reflective studies of human fragility and resilience. In his quiet way, he began to take responsibility for the consequences of our entangled choices, his creative spirit now tempered with the gravity of reality. Slowly, we learned to navigate the delicate dance of forgiveness. Our shared meals became sessions of deliberate conversation, where each word was measured and every silence understood as part of the dialogue. Michael's tentative steps toward rebuilding trust were met with my own earnest promises to rebuild the shattered bonds. We agreed that healing was not a linear journey, but a mosaic of setbacks and breakthroughs, a continuous quest to reconcile the past with the potential of tomorrow. In the midst of this arduous process, I discovered that redemption was not a destination, but an ongoing commitment, a daily decision to acknowledge our flaws and strive toward mutual understanding. The family, once fractured by betrayal, began to stitch itself together through shared grief, courage, and the slow blossoming of forgiveness. As autumn painted the world outside in hues of amber and gold, we embraced our imperfect path, determined to learn from our mistakes and nurture the delicate fledgling hope that life, in all its painful complexity, could still be beautiful.